The Russian-Ukrainian war continues, continuing to erase cities from the face of the earth, alter the fate of people. The most active areas are the Avdiivka sector and Kurakhove sector, where the Russians have been conducting banzai attacks in recent days, which, let's be frank, are bringing them certain results. And again, here the Russians' turtle tank showed up in battles, which even managed to return intact from the attack. Combat actions are also ongoing in other sectors. There are also several important news items both on the international arena and regarding the development of the modern weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine. We will discuss all this in more details further on. Hey, my name is Alex, and this is a quick update on the Russian-Ukrainian war from the perspective of someone living within it. So, here are more details on the situation at the front. On the Lyman direction, no change have been recorded. According to the Ukrainian soldier, our guys internally have firmly entrenched themselves in positions. The Russian offensive pace here not only decreased, but sharply faded. The peak of tension and the crappy situation for us has passed, but we don't relax, because Terne indeed hold key significance. Active combat actions continue in Chasiv Yar direction, in the vicinity of Bogdanivka, Listviny Forest, on the eastern outskirts of Chasiv Yar and Ivanivsky. The city is subjected to constant daily bombardment with aviation bombs by Russian bombers. That is roughly the situation here. In the same direction, in the area of town Krasnogora, the 26th Artillery Brigade, together with the FPV operators of the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade and spotters of the 30th Brigade Identifier, tracked and destroyed a Russian fuel and lubricant depot and 152mm self-propelled artillery unit 2S3 Acacia. This is how Chasiv Yar looks today. Another city turning into ruins and piles of bricks and concrete. But they are obviously not only bombing Chasiv Yar. For instance, in the footage they are shelling the settlement with guided bombs RBC-500, the town of New York, located between Chasiv Yar and Avdiivka. And this fate befalls most of the settlements near the front lines. Avdiivka direction. On the northern flank of the Avdiivka direction, Russian forces advanced along the railway towards the eastern outskirts of the village of Ocheretino and occupied the territory of the Ocheretino-Tyaglova substation. The enemy advance was recorded in the area up to 320 meters wide and up to 100.2 kilometers deep. In the area of Berdychiv and Semenivka, a high pace of combat operations continues. This footage captured Russian infantry in Semenivka on the Avdiivka direction, Kurakhove direction. In the southeast outskirts and the southern part of Krasnogorivka, a high pace of combat operations continues. Russian forces continue attacks supported by armored vehicles along the Lesnodorozhna and Lermontova streets at these points. A new enemy control zone was identified in an area up to 1.9 kilometers wide and up to 850 meters deep. And here we have footage of a strike by HIMARS MLRS on live Russian army forces at the Krasnogorivka railway station building. Russians continue assault actions on the southeast outskirts of Krasnogorivka. Another footage shows movement of two parallel enemy columns, totaling 7 units of equipment. The tanks and armored vehicles reach the station, where troops are disembarked. Defense forces are firing at them continuously. However, unfortunately, hits are few, allowing Russians to disembark infantry. In another attack on Krasnogorivka, another self-propelled garage was spotted in the Russian column. They even attached EW equipment to the roof this time. Well, the column broke through to the station and disembarked infantry, so claiming that all this makeshift modification by the Russians don't help at all would probably be incorrect. Although I believe that the lack of ammunition and personnel in the armed forces of Ukraine plays a significant role in the success of the Russians. And I'm not alone in this belief. Here's the word of Ukrainian soldiers. The main point is that FPV is not a panacea. It is also important to have other weapons and ammunition as well as personnel. On the same direction, in the area east of Vuhledar, fighters from the 72nd Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces defeated an enemy assault armored group. The enemy's losses in the technical part consist of at least 6 MTLB armored vehicles, 2 T-62M tanks, 3 APCs and 1 T-72B tank. On the Rabotino direction, a high pace of combat operations continues in the area of the settlement of Rabotino. The situation near Rabotino from a fighter of the 65th Brigade. The situation is constantly tense. We have been moved slightly east of Rabotino, where the Russians conducted an assault with the 5 BMDs and 5 APCs, all destroyed even before they approached, thanks to artillery. The infantry was finished off with grenades dropped from the drones. We have significantly increased the number of night Mavics and night FPV drones, which is already having a positive impact on the front line near Rabotino for us. On the Tavria direction, meanwhile, pro-Russian channels report that the Ukrainian Armed Forces have expanded their foothold in Krinky by 500 meters. The opponent, referring to the Ukrainian Armed Forces, expanded their foothold on the left bank of the Dnipro River to the west of Krinky by 500 meters in width. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have increased their troops numbers here also. Also, the Russian army has built over 100 kilometers of fortifications on the coast of Crimea in a month. The fortification appeared during February-March 2024. The total length exceeds 100 kilometers. Obviously, at this stage, they will be used to repel sabotage raids by Ukrainian Ministry of Defense Intelligence, and in the future for repelling possible larger-scale landing operations from Ukraine. Speaking of landing operations, Ukrainian engineers are developing a new submarine capable of launching torpedoes, missiles, and transporting troops. This submarine, known as Kronos, has undergone successful testing for possible military use. The vessel can likely move silently at the speed of 50 km per hour and can carry a payload of explosives or other useful cargo. So, as we can see, the Russian forces, leveraging their advantage in weaponry and manpower, continue to find the weak spots in the defense of the Ukrainian defense forces. This is causing them significant losses, and it is not justifiable to say that Ukrainian forces is fighting without casualties. In the footage, Ukrainian soldiers return from their mission happy to be alive and intact. Meanwhile, Ukraine struck the airfield in Jankoy, Crimea. The 39th Helicopter Regiment of the 27th Mixed Aviation Division of the 4th Command of the Southern Military Districts Air Force and Air Defense of Russia is stationed there with 3 aviation squadrons. At least the S-400 air defense system and radar systems were destroyed during the attack, as confirmed by photos spreading across the network. Apparently, the strike was carried out with 2 tactical ballistic missiles MGM-140 ATA-CMS. Judging by the fire map, Ukraine hit where it was needed, because it's burning well. Mostly hit where the parking spaces for helicopters, so there is a good chance of damaging some. This airfield is the base for Ka-52, Mi-28, 35 and 8 helicopters, as well as the S-400 air defense battery. Well, at least the battery apparently can be discounted now. Also, in the Russian city of Bryansk, partisans burned down an electrical substation. As a result of the destruction of the transformer at the power station, certain objects remained without power, including those used by the Russians in the war. Military Unit Number 33-149, the 111th Military Engineering Plant, and the 192nd Central Military Plant. Furthermore, drones attacked the Gorbunov aircraft plant at the Republic of Tatarstan, where Tu-22M and Tu-160M aircraft are manufactured. As seen on the map, the distance is over 1000 kilometers, and obviously this is no longer a problem for Ukrainian drones. It is also evident that Ukraine has not been targeting Russian oil refineries recently, at the request of the United States, which is absurd in itself. Russia was clearly angered by such bold strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces, and as usual is launched a missile strike on civilian infrastructure in the city of Chernihiv. At the time of recording this video, 16 people had died and more than 40 Chernihiv residents had been hospitalized. Ukraine urgently needs air defense systems and F-16 aircraft to stop or significantly reduce this terror. It is needless to say that against the backdrop of the Russian increasing targeting of objects in Ukraine, the West seems to have begun to realize that it's cheaper to provide Ukraine with air defense systems than to later assist with the restoration of destroyed infrastructure. Despite the complexity of the war, Ukraine will not surrender and will not disappear anywhere. In an interview with Le Monde, the head of European diplomacy, Joseph Borrell, said, "Before talking about the restoration of Ukraine, we must avoid its destruction. It is much cheaper to buy Patriot systems than to restore power station targeted by the Russians." Furthermore, NATO will convene a meeting of the Ukraine-NATO Council on April 19. The meeting will discuss the delivery of air defense systems and ammunition to Kyiv. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg stated that when choosing between aiding Ukraine and bolstering their own armaments, NATO members should choose Ukraine. Alliance countries have a sufficient number of air defense systems that could be transferred to Ukraine, he added. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky gave an interview to PBS. The main messages were that without US assistance, Ukraine has no chance of victory. Russia currently has the upper hand in everything, with a ratio of approximately 1:30 in terms of aircrafts, 1:10 in terms of artillery shots, and so on. Putin does not want negotiation, he wants to destroy Ukraine. The peace summit in Switzerland will proceed without Russia to prevent it from blocking this initiative. Ukraine has a plan to defeat the enemy, and allies have a list of the technical support we need. Now it is just a matter of providing it. At the same time, China insists on Russia's participation in peaceful conference on Ukraine. Chinese leader Xi Jinping stated this during a meeting with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Beijing. He called on all parties to work together to restore peace more quickly and prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control. Moreover, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, announced that separate bills with a structured and substantive process for amending them would be considered this week, including providing support to Ukraine. It seems that the 6-month saga of deciding to help Ukraine is coming to the end, and the decision will finally be made. In the meantime, in the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, they did not recognize Putin's legitimacy. As reported by the head of the PACE Committee on Migration, Refugee and Displaced Persons, Alexei Goncharenko, PACE is calling on member states of the Council of Europe, observer states, namely the United States and others, and the European Union to stop all contacts with the Putin regime, except for humanitarian ones. In addition, the elections in Russia were called so-called and also unfair and unjust. And that wraps up today's video. If you found this information helpful or somehow insightful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.